Welcome, everybody, here to the Basketball Passport Podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, joined as always by Leigh Ellis, here to talk to you about the last week or so of NBA basketball. Again, Sundays are our trips around the NBA and the NBA universe. Thursdays, we take you on trips around the world. If we have emergency episodes and all of that good stuff, you can find us here as well. A reminder, please do hit that subscribe button here if you're watching live on YouTube. The YouTube page, if you are looking for it, is youtube.com/@basketballpassport. If you guys are listening in the morning to the podcast version of this, hit that subscribe button, hit that review button, and then tell your friends and all of that good stuff. My final kind of request here, hit us with emails. I made this nice, easy to remember email for those of you who have your questions for us to hit us with. That is basketballpassportpod@gmail.com. I'm going to see if I can make it longer.
I think this is already my favorite running gag we've got going here. This is great. So I think we said, immediately we should shorten it. Then we thought, you know what, people will remember it for its length. Brevity is overrated. So this is great.
I'm gonna, I think I'm gonna add it. I'm gonna it's gonna be basketball passport podcast next time. And all of that
with Anthony and Leigh on Thursdays.
It's gonna keep getting longer.
Yeah,
Leigh, how you holding up? You having
good,
a good
man?
Weekend?
Good. Yeah. It's been a good weekend here in the ATL. Been a hot one actually. Yeah. We've had that resurgent, that late summer here. So it's good. But we've got some NBA action underway finally, which is always fun.
Yeah, I was surprised how, because we've been doing this a little while. I've watched plenty of preseason basketball. I was surprised how into the preseason games I've been so far. Maybe it's because of this project. Maybe it's because of the place that the league finds itself. Maybe it's because my fantasy football team sucks. Who can say, honestly?
Yeah.
But they've been good. They've been good. Today on the show, we're going to be talking about not just the preseason games that we have watched, but more generally how we watch preseason games, what we look for as analysts, and what fans should maybe be looking for when their teams take the court in preseason. We'll also talk about the Boston Celtics and Denver Nuggets playing in Abu Dhabi, some of the sights and scenes from there now that it has taken place. In a matter of an hour or so, LeBron James and Bronny James could potentially share the court for the first time, as LeBron didn't play in the Lakers preseason opener, neither did Anthony Davis. So we'll give our thoughts on that entire story. Things around the Clippers don't seem particularly great. So we're going to discuss the weird Kawhi Leonard injury situation for the umpteenth time. And we also got word today that PJ Tucker is going to be stepping away. He and the Clippers have mutually agreed to find a way to part ways this season. And then finally, because we got our first look at Dallas, Klay Thompson in a Dallas Mavericks uniform, it begged the question of what are the weirdest, new players in New Jerseys and uniforms that we can recall. And then also give our thoughts on Dallas Klay to this point and how we think that's going to fit moving forward. And then, obviously at the end of the show, we will preview where we will be taking you on Thursday. So
yes,
it's a fun episode there.
Yeah, I'm really excited for Thursday because I actually spoke today to Pelicans GM David Griffin, and he told me who he thinks is the most underrated player in NBA history, and I'll be talking about that on Thursday. So great conversation. Griff's, I got to know him a little bit at my time at NBA TV there, and man, he's got some stories there, and he shared them with me, some of them with me today. One of those things, I wish I actually kept it as a podcast because we were chatting for about 20 minutes. It was just one story after the other, and it was hilarious. So happy to include some of that on Thursday's show.
It's Kareem. It's Kareem, and I hope Griffin got that one right. So Leigh, I obviously cover a specific team and have covered a specific team. I've always had interest in the rest of the league. I dabbled in hosting I hosted Locked On NBA for a little while. And so like I looking at how the Lakers open preseason games, I'm kind of accustomed to that. But what do you look at, from preseason teams, as you have to keep in mind what's going on around the league while you were covering them in your various stops before?
Yeah, I mean, you can't take much out of the games. Of course, it's not really much more than glorified practice or even summer league type stuff. Because if you look at a result and think that could mean anything, you're looking at it wrong. So you really just sort of want to see if a player's maybe added or lost that 15 pounds of muscle. Who's gotten bigger? Who's gotten a bit smaller? How are the teams looking? And for the Celtics, for example, I'm not sure how much you've seen of Jaylen Brown, but he looks like he's in just the best shape of his life. I mean, he looks,
which is insane.
Yeah,
because he's already very athletic.
Absolutely, and he looks so shredded right now. And I also noticed today in the second Nuggets and Celtics game, Jason Tatum looks like he's actually packed on a little bit of muscle there too, on the shoulders and on the chest. And I mean, the Celtics are going to come into this season obviously as the target for everybody because they are the defending champs. And so it looks like they've their two main players there, their two star players, realize they're probably going to get beaten up a little bit more this year. They're probably going to get more physical defense on them. So it looks like they've sort of stacked it up. But it's tough because do you take anything out of it if a guy hits a lot of shots or all of a sudden he's doing something out of the out of left field? But is that going to happen during the regular season? I mean, we just don't know. I think one thing, of course, that everyone's going to be watching this year, whether you like it or not, or certainly the first couple of weeks here, is just LeBron or Bronny. What role he's going to play, how many minutes he's going to get, and how he's going to look. I feel sorry for him because he's going to be more scrutinized than any other player maybe in the league at the start here, no matter what he does, whether it's good or bad. But he looked okay in his first game there, like on the floor, had a nice play, made a nice pass, and according to the Lakers was impactful defensively. So, I mean, that's all he can really do. I know he's going to set it up here for in about an hour or so for his second game when it's take your son to work day for the Lakers. Yeah. But it's good. It's when you've been starved of basketball, it's easy to sort of overanalyze preseason games. But ultimately, you're just sort of happy to have it back, and that's really all you can take out of it. Is just like we're not that far away. The only other thing I would like is if the NBA shortened the preseason, just made it 2 games and then got into it, because the season's long enough as it is. You don't need, another 2 weeks on top of it of meaningless games. Yeah,
for me, my approach is a little bit different again because I cover the one team specifically. And one of my favorite things to kind of keep an eye on is, every team will have their focuses that they mention in media day and during training camp and in practices and then scrums after practices. You'll have coaches saying that we're working on this, we want to do this, and this is the kind of culture and identity that we're looking to build in preseason. And I basically take them at their word and head into preseason looking to see if they're actually executing on those visions and keeping an eye out for the Lakers, for example. One of their major focuses this year with Rui Hachimura is whether he will be, they want him crashing from the corners on offensive rebounds. And I want to see how consistently he does that, because he has this tendency to float if he isn't scoring, and will sometimes not impact the game the way that you would like him to be able to impact the game, given his physical skill set and all of that stuff. If he isn't scoring, and I that's one of the things that I look for. And yeah, you're absolutely right that, preseason for the most part is, like Jokic, we'll talk about the games in Abu Dhabi here in a little bit, but you watch Jokic in preseason and he's just kind of floundering around, making sure he doesn't get hurt, and is ready to go for the beginning of the season.
That's how he also plays in the finals too, by the way, just sort of floundering around. Yeah.
But like if he's a league ambassador playing in Abu Dhabi, you'd kind of like him to try to break a sweat, in those games. But maybe that's a
Come
lot
on,
to
Anthony,
ask for.
you're asking a bit much out there. I mean, any other man breaks a sweat just walking in Abu Dhabi. It was pretty hot out there, but Jokic is not your average man. The most excited I saw him was when someone asked him about the new horses he got in the summer. He got 6 new horses. It was like he had 6 new girlfriends. He was.
It is funny, like again. These guys answer the same question over and over and over again, and versions of the same question over and over again. And I know some people kind of roll their eyes when you get questions completely out of left field, but those to me always make for the most interesting moments, because that's when you get to pull the veil back a little bit. You get to see what these guys are actually passionate about. I'm not saying that Jokic isn't passionate about basketball. He clearly is. You wouldn't be as great as he is if not. But does he care about preseason game 1? No. So let's talk to him about something he actually wants to talk about.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing. I mean, a guy like him, some people sort of criticize his attitude as if it's, somewhat, blasé, and he doesn't really care about what he's doing, but he just expresses himself in a different way. And he's not afraid to say, my wife, my family, our children, or they've got one child there, that's his priority. And that's what he really, wants to be first as a father and a husband. So, you can't question him when he's out on the court. I mean, he's an incredible player. He's 3-time MVP, a champ. And, so the results are there. If he doesn't do it in the same way, like a Kevin Garnett may, with that intensity and, that sort of ferocity that he used throughout his career. But ultimately, the results are there for Jokic. So, that's all that counts, and that's all that matters at the end of the day. And, you can't blame him for a guy who, they spend obviously a lot of time playing basketball. He's just come off the Olympics as well, and he's got to play 2 games that don't count for anything. So he's not going to hit top gear, and that's fine. That's fine with me. I mean, that's what preseason games are. But it's funny how he hasn't bowed at all to any of the sort of pressure from anybody to be like, just pretend that just say things that make you pretend, you're into it more than it sort of seems like sometimes.
Do you think he should? Do you think he owes it to the league to do that kind of a thing?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there's no obligation that, you have to be a cheerleader in that sense. I mean, again, he the results for me, in terms of the accolades and the awards, and the Nuggets are considered a, championship contender going into this season. That's all that really matters. That you can't, legislate how people have to also behave, because I mean, look at Kawhi Leonard. I mean, Kawhi Leonard, he said, "I don't watch NBA basketball." Remember one time? Yeah. So, I think anytime you try to sort of say to a guy, "Hey, can you at least, pretend you're interested," you're just not going to get the reaction you're looking for. So that's just his personality, and he's comfortable who he is, and I think it's enjoyable because it's certainly not fake. You can't. He's not running a character or a persona out there. It's just the way he is, and it's certainly different to what we've seen in the past.
What did you think of the games there in Abu Dhabi? They were underway.
Yeah.
Kind of tough hours for him because of how, the time zone differences and stuff. But what do you think so far?
Well, I mean, it's the showpiece. I really like watching other people's Instagram stories of what else is happening, and then seeing all the marble palaces and things like that around Abu Dhabi, and the opulence and things like that, because we talked about it the other day. The actual game in the court, it could be any arena in the NBA. It's the absolutely the same as far as the court and the crowd and all that. There's nothing unique necessarily about that court. It's not like you can automatically tell they're playing at the Staples Center there, or the Crypto.com or Madison Square Garden or anything like that. So that's the only part of it for me that doesn't quite have that sort of wow factor. And we talked about what they did for the preseason games at EuroLeague down in Athens. The open air court in the hundreds of years old stadium because it gave it something different. And these games were just sort of like, well, you're tuning in to see it, and there's obviously a ton of celebrities there. I don't know if you caught them all, but Ronaldinho, Thierry Henry was there. Steve Harvey was looking $1 million out there today. He was looking great. So it's certainly something where a lot of people were there just to be seen, because again the actual court doesn't pop off the screen for me. And again, actually, Adam Silver also talked about how he had spoken to Giannis, Nikola Jokic, and Luka Doncic about them. They had all asked, that they want to have a game played in one of those cities, if not more than one. And Adam Silver was pretty open about it. He was like, well, it's too expensive, really. I mean, he wants to go there, he said, but ultimately it's not something that they can do as a one-off event. So interesting that that was addressed so quickly and so directly as well, because again, we talked about it that, these things are about money at the end of the day, and the NBA doesn't want to take a loss. And the only part of it I thought was a little confusing was he was more focusing on saying, well, they're not looking there sort of as a long-term business adventure, which I think they should, but clearly not. The money is with Abu Dhabi right now. This is the third year, and this is a part of a much broader business venture. So we're likely to see more games in the future there, and certainly, the chances of it being in Greece or Serbia or Slovenia or something like that is unlikely to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer that I guess if I want honesty and you request honesty and you get the honesty from him there. So it's kind of a bummer to just get it so straightforward that way. But with the league being so insanely impacted by players coming from those regions, you'd like a little bit more kind of political answer,
Yeah.
Anything.
I mean, that's a thing. Like because again, the chances of us getting a player from Abu Dhabi in the NBA virtually zero. Whereas the chances of getting players from Serbia, Greece, Turkey, places like that in the NBA in the next 10 to 15 years, I mean, you're going to get plenty. And they may even be like Jokic and Doncic and winning awards and really impacting the game. So you would like the NBA to feed that sort of part of the region with some games and also maybe get some ideas on what they're doing out there, which may help the American game at the grassroots level, at the youth level, because there's a lot of people complaining. I mean, it goes back, even Kobe used to complain about AAU basketball not being great for development of players. So, the NBA not only would be good to go out and play games there, but potentially learn how the game is taught to young people out there to see how they're now having such an impact on the NBA.
Malcolm chiming in with an astute observation here. Anthony definitely watching the Dodgers off screen. All right, Leigh, you aren't watching this off screen as I am. My Dodgers, you guys can see the hat above here. I grew up Dodgers. I bleed blue, I bleed purple and gold. I am all of these things. Just now, what happened in the game, Leigh, is Mookie Betts just hit a homer. Should have been a homer. The porch in left field is short, so a player can reach pretty far into the stands. But if you're in the stands there and the player is reaching to you, you can make it tough for him to catch the ball. And the first thing that you see is this guy in the front row is like moving away from the guy, and I'm like, you're not fanning right. Like, what are you doing? So yeah, I am. You caught me, Malcolm. My sincerest apologies. But that is going on in the background. My last kind of thought on the Abu Dhabi thing. Is I didn't think the NBA did nearly enough to, like, whether it was social media, whether it was, working with their league partners to get the word out there. I know that the focus right now is on football, and I know that the focus right now, you're literally watching. It's hard for me to make this point.
Where's the focus?
While I'm watching baseball over there. And but still, I just, the hours there's no getting around the hours or the time that the games were going to be played. But I did kind of think that it was I don't know, half-assed almost, like from a messaging and a branding standpoint.
Yeah.
This was a pretty big opportunity that I thought was just kind of like whatever, to most people, to people who aren't us, the more casual observer, we're just like, oh, that's okay. All right.
Yeah. Well, again, this is where I think they should take something like the in-season tournament, like take that out there, because then people will be interested to watch because there's actual stakes in the game. When there's no stakes, it is tough. We're talking about preseason basketball because no score means anything in preseason basketball. So if you're going to go to Abu Dhabi and you play 2 games, again, why not just do it for that in-season tournament and give the teams an extra day or 2 off on the other side? But again, these guys, they're not exactly flying Ryanair over there. They're flying in their own private planes.
Yeah,
they can sleep, they can rest. It's not like that you can't recover from something like that. And again, if you want to make the in-season tournament different and stand out, then put it somewhere like this and make it so that there are actual real stakes in the contest and people are going to tune in and watch it. But it's so hard to really engage in preseason basketball. Doesn't matter who's playing, doesn't matter where they're playing, because it just doesn't mean anything. It doesn't stand out. No. So, I think that's again, not something that the NBA will do. I know they're playing 2 games in Paris in January between the Pacers and the Spurs, but I would be more inclined to use this market in Abu Dhabi for something that actually carries value, because otherwise, again, for me, I'm just noticing all the celebrities like Thierry Henry, the Arsenal great, was out there playing against Gerard Piqué, the Barcelona soccer player. They were playing a little one-on-one there. I'm like, well, this is fun. I mean, these are 2 incredible athletes in a completely different sport, and they're out there having fun. It's like, well, I'll watch this, but the game itself is, again, it loses your attention fairly quickly.
Yep. Yeah. I would maybe put the game itself in a different setting too, or like try out different angles on the court, to actually televise the game. Just make it seem like the basketball itself isn't just any other preseason basketball game.
Well, that's right. And that's why the Champions League in soccer stands out, because it is different. I mean, you're playing obviously in the same grounds, but it's at a different part of the week. It's midweek. There's stakes in those games and it keeps moving around. And so that's what makes it great. And again, I know Adam Silver, a lot of his ideas come from sort of how things are done in the soccer world to try to incorporate into the NBA. It's very tough to do that when you don't have another league that's anywhere near the standard of the NBA. But again, when you're just painting the floors, the court surface is different, and then playing in Vegas, and as you said the other day, people are going, well, some of these games count for the regular season standings anyway, and then some of them don't. So, what is it? People don't know.
Yep. All right, moving on to basketball back here in the States. The Lakers, in a matter of about an hour or so, will be playing tonight with LeBron James, with Anthony Davis in the lineup. They didn't play in the preseason opener on Friday. That makes for the opportunity then potentially for LeBron and Bronny to be on the court together. And will be a fun moment whenever it happens. I kind of actually wonder if it's going to happen tonight, or if they're going to try to save it for the regular season or whatever. But Leigh, what's your kind of general take on the whole Bronny LeBron situation? Where obviously that Bronny has pretty high expectations, higher than they would be even if he was just Bronny's or LeBron's kid.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was obviously a lot of people criticizing the Lakers for making the nepo draft pick. Saying, well, you're only drafting because he's LeBron's son, and that means you're going to keep LeBron. But at the end of the day, if he can't play, he's not going to play. JJ Redick's not going to just run him out there just to keep LeBron happy. And LeBron, I don't think, would honestly expect him to be out there if he's not performing. And it's going to be tough for anybody to crack into that lineup. I mean, there's certainly not going to be any shots for him on offense, but if he can hustle and make some plays defensively, he might get some mop-up minutes. But ultimately, that's what it's going to come down to is JJ Redick knows he's under the pump from now already, and the Lakers have to win. And if Bron James Jr. isn't contributing, and he's unlikely, I think, to even probably make the roster in the opening night. I think he's probably, he's probably not going to be there. But even if he does, I'll be shocked if he plays any significant minutes. If it's a blowout either way, he might get a run. But other than that, this is not just like, well, he's LeBron's kid, so let's play him as well for 20 minutes a night to keep everyone happy. At the end of the day, it's a business, and this league finds out pretty quickly if you can play or if you can't. And if he's not performing, he simply won't. LeBron himself knows that, again, the Lakers, very few teams have more pressure on them than the Lakers. And that's ultimately what people are going to be talking about, is how they perform. Anthony Davis, I think, is always the biggest sort of, not an X factor, but which sort of Anthony Davis are you going to get? Because at times he looks dominant, unstoppable, one of the top 75 players of all times. But there are so many games as well, and so many times as well. To me, it looks like he's either injured or he's coming back from an injury, or he's just, doesn't even have the gas in the tank sometimes to play multiple games in a row. But when he does play, I think the Lakers look significantly better. So, look, there's a ton to watch out for this season. I mean, JJ Redick himself, I don't think that was the right move to hire him. I think he's a very smart guy. I think we all know and heard him on ESPN and thought, hey, this guy really knows what he's talking about. But you can do that when you're in the commentary box versus doing it every single game and having to manage the team and the players and the timeouts and run those plays. A little bit harder when there's so much more pressure on you. So, any first-time coach, it's a huge learning experience, and he's going into the most high-pressure situation in the league without any experience, and it's going to be tough. And I don't know if you saw, even just yesterday, I think it was, or maybe Friday, someone asked him about, Rui Hachimura taking the next step, and JJ seemed to shoot back at him like, well, what's the next step,
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, man. Like,
you haven't even gotten to the first game.
Yeah. Now, I actually didn't disagree with how he sort of said, well, what does that, he was basically, what does that mean? The next step, from what to what? But it just sort of felt to me a little combative early on. And I think that's what we're going to see a ton from, because yourself, if the Lakers, are 2-7 or something like that, I mean, people are going to be freaking out pretty soon, because the Lakers cannot be under 500 early in the season. They have to be, in the top 4 in the Western Conference and playing impressive basketball, or else people are going to, lose their mind. Yeah,
as far as like the whole LeBron Bronny thing, it's obviously, like, it is objectively incredible that LeBron has played long enough to even have the opportunity to play with his son. Like, it's kind of insane. Like, if I would have told you, 10 years ago, what's more likely, that LeBron James would be playing at an elite level going into his age 40 season, or that he would have a son who'd potentially play in the NBA, right? It's crazy that, like, the LeBron half of this has been so, like, thoroughly nailed. He is still playing at an incredible level, and he is gets to play with his son. The nepotism and stuff like that, like, it's the Lakers. They are nepotism. Like, they just it's a weird line in the sand for me to try to draw that the nepotism that lands Rob Pelinka his job, and that lands Kurt Rambis his job in the organization. Like, that nepotism is somehow okay, but the nepotism that allows Bronny to be signed as an undrafted free agent, I don't know. I just or the 55th pick in the NBA draft. Like, I can't get myself to care about that.
Well, I mean, Jeannie's the owner because she inherited it from her dad too. So it's but that's the thing. Like, the whole league though kind of operates like that. It's not often what it's who you know. I mean, players and coaches and managers and all sorts of things tend to just sort of go wherever. I mean, look at what happened with the Sixers a few years ago. Remember, with Brian and Jerry Colangelo. I mean, crazy sort of stuff. But the thing about LeBron as well, and this is one thing, love him or hate him, and he's got pretty much equal parts of both at this point of his life. there's no way you cannot respect how he is able to maintain the incredible standards of play in this, his 22nd season now. That is just remarkable that he can still go out there and he's going to give you 25, 7 and 7 and probably play 38 minutes. And this is after being the best player for Team USA in France, where you logged the heavy minutes there, had all the big plays except for when Steph took over in that last 2-minute stretch. So LeBron, to me, is in that super elite category of athlete, like a Lionel Messi and a Maradona and a Michael Jordan. These guys who just, are able to continually compete for seemingly forever at the highest level. And so I respect him tremendously for that. And he's deserved the fact that he's scored more points than anybody else, and he probably could play for another 3 seasons if he chooses to, because he's not out there. No one's out there playing him just for the sake of playing him. He is still the Lakers' best player. That's a concern. You shouldn't have basically a 40-year-old guy as your best player.
No.
I mean, when Kareem, this is the crazy thing. When I started following the league, Kareem was at the time probably 35 or 36, and it was like, oh, the old man Kareem. And he was, his numbers really started to drop off in the last 2 seasons there, 87, 88, and 88, 89. And he looked like an old man. He would sort of hobble up this court there. He'd lost all his hair. And it was like, yeah, man, this is an old man out there playing. LeBron honestly looks physically as good as he's ever looked, I think. He takes incredible care of his body. He's still, he goes out there and plays as hard as he can. So, you have to respect him for that. And he's going to be really, really good again this season and put up identical numbers to what he put up to last year. The only thing he doesn't have is that ability to just bend games to his will. I mean, prime LeBron in Miami and Cleveland, and to some extent in the early first season there with the Lakers. But those days when he was in, the Heatles and the Cavs, it was just like LeBron can just take over the game anytime he wants. And he used to do that. He doesn't seem to, he can't do that just any night he wants anymore. Occasionally he will, but not in that sort of like, well, it's winning time. LeBron's just going to go nuts and drag the Lakers across the line.
Yeah, I do wish the Lakers were better so that we could enjoy the Bronny thing more. Like right now, it almost feels like a bit of a sideshow to a crashing train. It's just like if the Lakers were operating at a higher level organizationally, and they were able to make add an NBA player this summer, do anything like that, I would be able to more fully enjoy the Bronny situation. But as I'm just kind of generally bitter to the way that the Lakers are run, it's just kind of like, yeah, that's cool. Can we just roll the ball out there?
Hey, if this means anything to you, when I was 15, I won 2 championships playing on my dad's team back in Australia. So
many people are saying your dad is the LeBron James of Australian basketball players.
I wasn't going to say it, but
were you a net player? Were you did you only get on that team because your dad was so good?
Well, sort of. I mean, both my brothers also played at some point with dad, but your initiation was you had to be the scorer for probably 2 seasons first. And then you were allowed to come and play on his team. And so we won a couple of championships, and I think I was even allowed to have a beer to celebrate. That was the crowning moment there. So Bronny and Bron, that's the bar. They've got to win 2 championships to be considered the same level, the same category as me and my dad playing in Sunbury back in the late 80s.
I don't know how can you try to segue off of that. So I'm not going to. In kind of less kind of uplifting news, the Kawhi Leonard knee situation, it doesn't seem like anybody has been particularly truthful in any of the updates on his knee. So you have that going on. The Clippers obviously also lost Paul George this offseason, who signed with the Philadelphia 76ers. And now, apparently, PJ Tucker and the Clippers are just like, you know what? We hate each other so much. The Clippers were so annoyed that he picked up his $11 million player option that they're like, just go away. Just like, enough. Just go away. And, normally losing a Paul George who chooses in free agency to go to Philadelphia, normally when you still have the one superstar, it's something that like the fan base, players, the organization really rallies around the superstar that you have. And then you try to, you watch the Clippers try to do that. And Kawhi Leonard is just like, oh, Paul left? What? So what's your take on what's going on with little brother there in LA?
Yeah, it's very weird with Kawhi. I mean, he's 33, but it feels like he just hasn't played. I know he played 68 games last season, 52 the one before, and he was injured the season before that. So, he's made progress in that sense, but it's not super encouraging that he sort of is already somewhat,
Hobbled.
beaten up. Yeah, hobbled. And we know that he's got no plans whatsoever to play 82 games. He talked about it when he was interviewed. He basically said, I want to win a championship. That's my goal, and I'll play when I'm healthy. So that's always interesting. But I think the thing is we've seen the best Kawhi Leonard. He's not going to. I don't think he can return to the player he was, where he was easily in that top 5 players in the league. I think there's just those injuries have caught up with him so much that it's very hard to see him staying out on the floor, playing those big minutes and big games, and just playing all the time. Like if he gets to 55 games this season, I think that'll be pretty good, because he'll take time off when he can, and he just seems to always again pick up these injuries. And the Clippers, it's funny, it's become James Harden's team. It just speaking of PJ Tucker, he was brought over in that trade. PJ's probably going to sign with the Sixers of Daryl Morey again. He'll just go back there, and that's where he feels most comfortable under a Daryl Morey team. But now all of a sudden, if you're a Clippers fan, it's like, oh, James Harden's our franchise guy now. Because you say Paul George has left, Russell Westbrook's obviously not there. Not that he was ever really the franchise guy. And again, it should be Kawhi, but you just don't know what you're going to get out of him. You just don't know when you're going to see him perform. And he's another one who was asked about training camp and preseason. And, someone said to him, who have you noticed who's really stood out? Who's been working on their game? And he was like, no one really stood out. So I don't know, again, if that's encouraging for Clippers fans or not encouraging, that he just hasn't been impressed with his own teammates. Usually that's, again, a more diplomatic answer you get from players of, oh, well, I think a lot of guys have been working on their game. I'm excited to see it come together opening night. But Kawhi was pretty blunt and was just like, no one's done anything. In fact, I don't know if you saw the NBA's preview for the season, that ad that's been running with Anthony Edwards and Kawhi Leonard sort of going in for a jump ball there. I was really surprised to see Kawhi in that role. I mean, not surprised to see Anthony Edwards. He's the up and coming face of the league, but Kawhi was there. I'm like, you're going to use the guy who's barely going to play and doesn't seem to have played and doesn't seem to be interested in all that sort of stuff either. I mean, what we were talking about before with Jokic trying to promote the league. I mean, Kawhi doesn't do any of that either. So that was a bit weird. But look, I think the Clippers are in for just another frustrating, empty season, unfortunately. I think they probably make the playoffs. They're in the hunt there, but I certainly don't have them as a title contender the way they are, for many reasons. Again, James Harden being their star player, and Kawhi being their other one. I just don't really think that's the sort of roster they've got surrounding those guys that are going to take them any further than where they finished last season.
Yeah, one thing too is that this West is so brutal. If you start to slip, you are going to really, really slide. So I think they have enough talent to kind of stay above water. James Harden is a very good regular season player. His issues tend to pop up in the postseason. So I think they'll be okay, but they just opened a brand new arena.
No. Yeah.
They are trying to gain a foothold in the city of Los Angeles, and they are doing some really interesting and cool things in their efforts to do so. It's just that you don't gain a foothold in the city of Los Angeles with merely okay.
Yeah.
And, they had this 2-1-3 era where, you had Paul George, you had Kawhi Leonard, you had all of that momentum behind him, and they have zero to show for it. Not a single finals appearance to show for it. No singular moments. If I ask somebody 5 years from now, hey, what do you remember, do you have that one moment that you can point to of the Kawhi, Paul George, Clippers era? They'll probably point to like them getting bounced when they had a 3-1 lead in the Western Conference Finals in the bubble. Like it won't be anything particularly great. And I mean, you still have to play the hand that you're dealt, and this is the hand that Steve Ballmer has kind of dealt himself. So he's trying to make the best out of a tough situation here. But I do kind of wonder at what point, if they are kind of toiling there at the bottom of the conference, if they are just kind of, if like Kawhi Leonard can't quite get healthy and all of that stuff, at what point do they pull the plug now that they've finally opened their thing and get the fans to, because NBA fans at this point are used to tanking. They're used to rebuilds. They know that that's a part of the NBA's reality, especially in the new CBA. So I do kind of wonder at what point in the season do they, if things aren't going very well, or if they're going the way that I think you and I see them potentially going, at what point do the Clippers kind of look at the hand that they're dealt and say, all right, maybe it's time to fold? And
but what does that mean? Like trade Kawhi? Isn't he signed 3 years and 160 million? The money is not going to be a huge factor in terms of when the new TV deal kicks in next season. But I'm just wondering about the market and of course James Harden. I think he's kind of run out of options at this point as well. So it's tough to sort of see the options that the Clippers really have there. It's almost like, well, you may as well just go with these guys and see how far it can take you and hope a little bit of luck falls their way. But of course, in their 40-year existence, it's always seemed to go against them. And it's just like to have the talent there assembled that they have had over the years. Again, going back to the Lob City days, and and then when you had Paul and Kawhi and James Harden, it's like on paper they should be really, really good. I think I picked them to win the championship actually back in 2020 because I love that roster build, and I thought, these guys are going to get it together, but. Of course, they blow the 3-1 lead. Then Kawhi gets injured. They lose to the Suns, and it's just one sort of disaster after the other. And the fact that Paul George, who's still is probably the healthiest and best, has the best outlook of all the players, he left and they got nothing for it. So stuff. I will say forever that Ty Lue I think is a really good coach. I like him as a coach, but. Again, you're playing with a roster that just continually, falls apart and breaks down, and they just never really connected. I mean, that was definitely the thing with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. For all the talent they had, it never felt like they had any sort of chemistry with each other. Really, in their years together, their 5 seasons together, it was like
you can't have chemistry with Kawhi. He just
that's true. I mean, he didn't really have anyone in Toronto. A little bit with Kyle Lowry, I suppose. He was only there for 1 season, but. Yeah, those Spurs teams felt still like Manu, Tony, and Tim were, who they were, and Kawhi was like, okay, we'll try to integrate him here, but they never really did. I mean, they were still successful, winning a championship, being in the finals. Kawhi was, of course, finals MVP there, but it never quite sort of, felt like they were all a part. I don't think Kawhi was probably going out for dinner with them and stuff as regularly as some of the other guys, like a Boris Diaw, who came on to that team and seemed to slot in perfectly for what they needed. So, tough outlook here for the Clippers once again.
Yeah, I'm just devastated to find that out. All right. The next one the next thing that we're going to talk about here is Klay Thompson, who is a Dallas Maverick. We saw him at Media Day wearing the Mavericks jersey and in the Mavericks uniform. We saw him. We've seen him. I believe we've seen him on the court so far. Have they played again?
No, I think they play their first game tomorrow night against Memphis. Yeah.
So they all we've seen so far are the media opportunities there for Klay Thompson in a Dallas uniform. Doesn't make it any less weird though to see him in that uniform. Before we get to the little game that we're going to play on the backside here, Klay Thompson on the Mavericks. Obviously, I covered very closely the Lakers' pursuit of Klay. It kind of came down to those last 2 teams. Dallas promised him a starting gig that he could not lose, essentially. The Lakers weren't willing to do that, and he goes to Dallas instead. And, Yeah, one thing that's been a little weird to watch from the outside looking in is how Warriors fans seem to feel about Klay Thompson. I would expect maybe a little bit of warmth. Eras do come to a close, and players do depart eventually. It's been a little interesting to watch Warriors fans and how they talk about Klay Thompson now that he is in Dallas. But what do you think about the fit? What do you think about, like, where would you set expectations for Klay Thompson in Dallas?
Look, Klay mechanically has been so perfect his whole career in terms of shooting the ball that if he can knock down those shots, then it's going to be great for the Mavs. It's going to be a nice release valve there for Kyrie and Luka Doncic. But obviously the last season or so there in Golden State, I think what we noticed was he's lost his speed. He's lost that ability to sort of get to those spots without defenders closing out on him. And the shots just weren't falling the same way. And outside of shooting, he obviously doesn't give you a whole lot. He doesn't go and attack the paint. He can't really run the offense in terms of a point guard or anything like that. So he's purely out there to hit threes. And if he's not doing that, he really doesn't add too much value to the court. But I'm someone, again, I've been very fortunate throughout my career to have seen him up close working on his game. And that's why, when I see, and I remember seeing him shoot the ball just over and over and over again during practices, it's a shock anytime he misses because, again, he's so mechanically perfect in terms of he squares his body up, that release, the elbows in, all those things that are so important. He does those perfectly, and I mean literally perfectly. So he won't lose that. But if he's not able to sort of generate space and he's slowed down a little bit, and again, he's had a blown Achilles and a blown knee. So, and he's 35, you just naturally slow down. And in the NBA, defenders can close out a lot quicker. The game catches up to people all the time. So that's where it's going to be the real challenge for him, is to get to those spots without defenders being able to slow him down. In the best case scenario, this is a perfect fit for the Mavericks because it's like, well, you got to defend Luka, you got to defend Kyrie, and then all of a sudden Klay Thompson's out there roaming free. And he doesn't need an invitation to shoot the ball. He'll shoot it. He'll let it go. But he just has to be able to find that same sort of rhythm that we saw in the prime Warriors where, the ball would cross halfway and if it was in his hands, it was going up, and most of the time it was going in. It was incredible to watch. But, he hasn't been that player for really. I mean, you can probably go back to when, the 2019 season. Yeah, when he had that first injury in the finals against the Raptors, and then he blew out the Achilles the following season. So he missed essentially 2 years of basketball, and he never really regained that same thing. So, I love Klay. I think he's great. He's funny. He's honest. He's sometimes he doesn't even seem to also be too bothered by anything other than just playing the game of basketball and his dog Rocco. But I'm excited. I think the Mavs had to make a move like this. I think they realized that they needed him, and if that meant they had to promise him a starting role, then it's worth it. Because the Mavs are in win now mode. They made it to the finals. Somewhat surprising they made it there, but they've also got to show Luka, hey, we're doing everything we can. When a guy like Klay's available, you got to grab him and hope that he can return to somewhat of the player we saw in Golden State. Because if he can, great for the Mavs. But if he can't, then you can sort of see him actually getting benched a lot if he's just not shooting or those shots aren't going down. Because as I said before, outside of that, there's just not a lot to his game.
Yeah, the biggest slippage that we've seen from Klay is on the defensive side. It's obviously the first thing that you think of when you think of Klay Thompson playing basketball is him shooting a basketball. It's, in my opinion, it's the prettiest shot that has ever existed in the sport. It's even prettier, I think, than Steph's, even though Steph's has made more threes and is a better shooter. Klay's shot is just, I'm a shooting nerd. That's my favorite thing to do. Is the only thing on a basketball court that I consider myself legitimately good at. And and so, like, watching Klay shoot, and I'm like, that's how you're supposed to, that's what that's supposed to look like, is Klay releasing it. And but actually, a super underrated aspect of his game was what he was able to do defensively. He was a legitimate 3-and-D wing. Maybe one of the best we've ever seen in that regard. and he just doesn't have the same lateral movement. He doesn't have the same explosion. And, that's what you need to be a good defender, because it's a reactionary position. And it's tough to see him try to move out there. I do have the Mavericks as the second best team in the West going into the season. I think OKC got better, and I think they're the best team in the West. I have Dallas behind them, and then Denver behind Dallas. Those are my kind of top three. I do think the nice thing for Klay is that he'll be expected to do less for Dallas than he was expected to do in Golden State. Narrowing his role down a little bit more, I think, will really help, and we'll see what that kind of looks like. But it's still going to be super weird to see.
Yeah. That's the thing.
I don't know if I'll ever get used to it.
No, that definitely is weird. I will just say Ray Allen for me has had the greatest, most prettiest shot.
He's got a great one too.
Yeah. Clay's is up there for sure, but Ray Allen, man, that was just a thing of beauty to watch. I remember even as a rookie out of UConn there, it was like, who is this dude? Like, because he was in the same draft as Iverson. He played against Iverson in the first game. Yeah. And I remember the commentator was like, because he hit a mid-range, was like, oh, watch out for this guy. Can't leave him open. Yeah. And so. But
the crazy thing about Ray was how high he elevated as a jump, as like a catch. Like normally guys who are great at shooting shoot more of a set shot. They don't elevate very high. Yeah. Ray Allen got off the floor like 20 inches or so whenever he was shooting his jumper. And it was beautiful.
Well, he was a dunker in his early years too.
Yeah.
He's had some really nice throwdowns in those first 3 or 4 seasons, and then sort of just, settled into more that role as the number 2 guard with the Bucks and the Sonics, and of course the Celtics championship and the Heat. But he that was his real strength, was his ability to rise up and add an extra couple of inches to that release point. And but man, he was beautiful to watch, Ray.
Yep. Finally here, to have a little bit of fun here, I asked Leigh to gather up, some of the weirdest jerseys or players in new jerseys. Not players in New Jersey, not the weirdest Nets that we ever saw, but the players in their new uniforms, and which ones kind of stand out to you. So Leigh, I'll lend you the floor.
Yeah. Well, if AI didn't exist, I would think this one here was created by AI. That doesn't actually make sense, but I just will never, ever see Tony Parker and believe that this actually happened for one season at the end of his career there, going to play for the Charlotte Hornets. But, I saw someone talk to him about that, and he said the reason he went there was because he just wanted to play for Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was his hero growing up, and Michael Jordan said, why don't you come and play for the Hornets? And he said, all right, no worries. And I think he signed a 2-year contract. He played one season, and that was it. So Tony Parker, Charlotte Hornet, I mean, it's pretty wild.
That's a tough, like, the weird thing about Tony Parker as a Charlotte Hornet is, the way that things ended with the Spurs. Like, I thought, if I remember correctly, I was like 100% sure he was just going to retire.
Yeah.
You could see he wasn't quite the same player, and he wasn't quite, particularly, he was always so fast, and he was just a hair slower, and that really impacted his game because he wasn't a very good shooter. And I was like, okay, well then go ahead and call it quits. Like, things just rounded out with the Spurs. And I think that's what the vast majority of everybody, and it was like, okay, he wants to keep playing. And I'm like, can the Lakers get in on this? Like, maybe. And then it was like, no, he's going to Charlotte.
Yeah.
Charlotte. No ring change. Like, you're not, what is the point of this? So, and then also like the difference in how bland Spurs jerseys are to like the bright teal pinstripe of the Charlotte Hornets made it even all the weirder.
Yeah. Well, I think he just was thought, you know what, I just want to go and play for Michael Jordan, and maybe people will just erase this from their memory. But the other one, I mean, there's plenty to choose from. I know, people have talked like Hakeem Olajuwon on the Raptors. That one was weird, but I kind of liked that one because I got a chance to see Hakeem play in person. One of my, he's my number 2 favorite player of all time. So I got to see him in the Raptors. He played against Michael Jordan on the Wizards. So I got to see my favorite two players of all time battle it out against each other in a preseason game when it was the Raptors and the Wizards. But I usually just say, yeah, I saw Jordan play in person. I saw Akeem Olajuwon play. I don't tell them the circumstances usually, but so I'm revealing that to you. But the other one that was really weird, and again, I just don't believe this one happened, Dwayne Wade on the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah. I think everybody would prefer to misremember this, just pretend it never happened.
Because the Bulls, he played for the Bulls before the Cavs, of course, made sense. He's from Chicago, and it was like that was kind of rumored for a couple of years that he was going to the Bulls. Things were sort of fading there in Miami, and he went there, and then of course LeBron was still on the Cavs, and he was like, well, I'll go to Cleveland and see if I can pick up another championship. And what's funny particularly about that one is back in 2010, before the Heatles had assembled, and there was, rumors about Wade and Bosh and LeBron potentially teaming up somewhere. Wade was in Toronto, and I was down there for the practice when the Heat were there. And someone asked him about, would you consider going to Cleveland? And he just laughed because he'd already won his championship. Remember, in Miami at that point, he'd won one in 2006, and it was like there was no way Dwayne Wade was moving to play with LeBron or Chris Bosh because he didn't need to. He was like, well, they can come and play with me. And obviously they did. But then it was funny that eventually, and in the end, he did end up having a cup of coffee, as they say, with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Although I still just don't really believe that happened. I'll give him the Bulls, like I said, there's some connection there to him. But the Cavs, didn't happen.
The weirdest part of all of that, okay, he wanted to go play with LeBron again. Kind of get it. Cleveland, weird, but that's where LeBron was. And, it makes a little bit more sense when you consider LeBron did Wade the favor by going to Miami.
Yeah.
Maybe they thought is some reciprocation there. The weirdest part of all of it was LeBron trading Wade. He's like, hey, man, this isn't going well, right? We can you want to just go to Miami?
Yeah.
What do you think? We had our fun. Let's just quit while we're not ahead.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And then he ended up playing, I think, one whole season after that too, I think, for the Heat, didn't he? I think in the end he had
moments that second time around too.
Yeah. It was great. So,
Somebody's asking
always
about
fun.
Magic Johnson or Scottie Pippen in their jerseys in Europe. And I Googled it, but I'm pretty sure Magic had the internet scraped for that one.
Well, he played in Sweden, remember, for a Swedish team that went bankrupt shortly after he played there. I think they were called L7 or something like that. And then Scotty played, where I think Scotty played? I think he played in Iceland. I think I found the picture. Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to add this really, really fast.
Wow. Look at this.
This is me going as fast as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And it's not helping me at all. But yeah, no, this is definitely the picture. Man, the whole Magic Johnson career was so fascinating, and he's such a lovable guy.
Yeah.
That he was going to light up whatever court he was playing on. Yeah. I legitimately didn't remember any of this happening. Yeah. Do you have any recollection of this?
Oh yeah, I remember because it was I think about 95, I think it was. Before because he went back to the Lakers in 96.
Mm-hmm.
And if I remember correctly, he sort of played there and he felt pretty good, and that's when I think that somewhat prompted him to sort of, make the return to the Lakers. But yeah, there he is, Magic Johnson.
The return to the Lakers also didn't end well.
No, but what about that fake of Latrell Sprewell? That's still, yeah, man. That's what I remember about that comeback. He was obviously a little heavier, a little bigger, not quite as fast, but he still had the magic in the ability to create those great little shots and those moments. And it was hilarious when he came back. But Yeah, didn't. And then he was the coach, wasn't he, for like 10 games or something like that?
You talk about things not going well.
Yeah.
It's hard to figure out like what was worse, him coaching or the Magic Hour. Like those, his late night TV show, or him trying to coach. Neither of those things.
What about when he quit his role as the special advisor or whatever in a scrum? He hadn't even told Jeannie yet.
Yeah.
Remember the old classic meme of "I'm not going to be here."
Remember.
It was like, and he said, "I couldn't tell Jeannie because she's my sister or something." It was like,
this is way worse, Magic.
Yeah,
this is so much worse.
I love Magic, man. I love him. I hope I get to meet him one day.
I got to meet him. He's, I covered the Dodgers briefly. My first big boy job in this industry was running Dodgers Nation, and they had just hired Dave Roberts, and they were having the introductory press conference, and I got to meet Magic there. And he's one of two people who, it doesn't matter how prepared I am for how big I know that they're going to be. It just absolutely blew me away how big Magic Johnson is. He is a giant. He is so big. The other one was Shaq. Those two people are just giant people. Yes. This has been a giant episode of the Basketball Passport podcast. A lot of fun. We're still kind of rounding out the edges here and working on what the voice of this sound, or what this voice of this podcast is going to look like. But we do have a really fun show lined up for you guys on Thursday. Leigh, why don't you explain to everybody what they can look forward to?
Yeah, so the Thursday show is, again, sort of more centered on international or European basketball events and activities. And I'm also going to have a focus particularly on France, the place of the Olympics this summer, the country that has had the last two number one picks. And as I mentioned off the top, I spoke with Pelicans GM David Griffin today, and he told me about one of his favorite players of all time, and certainly what he recalls as the most, or he says is the most underrated player in NBA history. So we're going to sort of talk a little bit about that, and talk about what's going on in France right now and why they're producing so many incredibly talented draft picks and players. And it's exciting. I saw Zach Rissacher at the Hawks Media Day on Monday last week, and it's funny seeing a young kid. Like, he's a little bit nervous, but of course, I mean, everyone would be, but he knows he's the number one pick. But he had a really nice confidence in the way he spoke. Confident in his own ability. It's not. He's obviously knows there's going to be some expectation on him here, but he spoke as if like, I'll be okay. So I'm really excited. The Hawks' first preseason game Tuesday night against the Pacers. I'll be down there to check it out myself and see what he looks like in person.
Yeah, I would love to know what they're doing. Like, are they literally stretching human beings out? Why are they all like, you have Rudy Gobert, who's this giant person, Victor Wembanyama. The Spurs hilariously are listing him at 7'3" this year. He is clearly 7'5". And then Rissacher is also a 7-footer. I can't wait to see those three guys on a basketball court together for fans. Like, that'll be really, really fun to check out as well. But no, France is going to be great. I'm looking forward to talking about France. And if you guys missed it, please do go back and check out Thursday's episode where we talked about what they're doing in Greece. We talked about Giannis, and we played a clip of Giannis talking about his court. We talked about Vlade Divac smoking cigarettes, all of that good stuff. It was a fun episode. It's been an absolute blast putting this thing together. Please hit that subscribe button here on YouTube. If you're looking for it, if you're listening to this in the morning and you guys are looking for where to find it on YouTube, go to youtube.com/@basketballpassport. And then if you want to send us an email, nice, easy email here for you guys, basketballpassportpod@gmail.com is where you can just hit copy and paste.
We'll send you $10 if you actually send us an email, because it'll be worth it for you to type all that out. So there you go, $10.
We is doing a lot of work there. I'll ask Odyssey and see if they have any interest in that. Hey guys, I made the world's worst email account for us. What do you think about sending people money for remembering it? I'll see what Bill thinks about that. But no, have a great rest of your Sunday, everybody. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, tell your friends that you love the show, tell your enemies that you hate it. And until Thursday, have a phenomenal week and safe travels.